Hello everyone, I'm Beth and today I am finally going to be putting my PC build together. So for those of you who haven't seen the part 1 of this video, that was more focused on the components I chose and why I chose those components. So if you're more interested in that, I would watch that first. And for those of you who have watched that, know that I have been waiting for the last piece of my puzzle, which you might be able to spot at the front here. So yeah, I was absolutely blown away that every company came back to me after I proposed this idea and said yes. Sort of still in shock from the whole idea, so thank you so much to every company that got back to me and all the PR teams that helped this all happen really, because it wouldn't have happened otherwise. It is my first ever PC build, so it's sort of a big deal to me. It's been quite an undertaking, but it has been really fun learning things as I've gone along. So I will first be going through quickly the components that I've chosen. As I say, if you want to know why I've chosen them, I would go back and watch the part 1 of this series, because that'll explain a bit more about the specs and things of each component. I will also include time codes in the description, or hopefully it'll be along the bar at the bottom if I can do it right this time, where you can skip ahead to the actual build rather than listening to the components again if you don't want to hear that. Also, there'll be a time code for when the actual build starts, past updating the BIOS on the motherboard, which I need to do. To start off with, the two components that you wouldn't have seen in the last video because they hadn't arrived yet are the PSU extension kit from ReaperCable, so thank you so much to ReaperCable for sending this out. This is going to look very cool. It's in white and carbon, but there is a ton of different colours on their website, but that was sent as a review sample. And also the big boy, I've been waiting for this for so long, the Ryzen 5600X. This CPU is part of AMD's Ryzen series and is part of the new line of processors that they've done, which is the 5000 series, which incorporates the Zen 3 architecture. So let's quickly go through the rest of the components. To start off with, in the corner there, we have the 2060 Super Gaming X from MSI, and also an MSI motherboard, which is a micro ATX board called the B550M Mortar. I also have the 3-in-1 pack of the CoolerMaster Masterfan Halo Edition, and we have, I think, 6 of those all together, and a lot of room in this case, which is, you probably recognise it, the Lian Li 011 Dynamic, and it is the Razer edition because gotta love some Razer. And lastly, out of the stuff that I could fit on my very small workbench, we have the HyperX Predator DDR4. And this pack is in the 4x8 configuration, which gives us a total of 32GB, which is much more than I've ever had before. Now for the rest of the components, I've laid them all out behind me, kind of like, you know, the night before you go on a school trip and you lay out your clothes. I literally did that last night, so then I would be the least stressed possible today. So I laid out my clothes, I put this here, I literally slept with the ring light not on, but still there, so everything was ready so I could just wake up, have a coffee, have breakfast and then film. Also, before I forget, the artwork on the 2 monitors behind me is by the artist called Digital Carbine, so make sure you check out their website because there's loads of free downloadable wallpapers for like iPhone and like portrait, landscape, whatever. So not an ad, just really cool artist. Also, just something to mention in the spirit of transparency, all of the samples, even though they were my first choice product and brand, were sent out to me as review samples in order to share this whole experience with you guys. So without you, it wouldn't have happened, and also without the companies, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you so much for everyone who's helped along the way, and I just wanted to be as transparent with you as possible. So the first thing I wanted to do was prepare the motherboard. I wanted to put as much onto the motherboard or into the motherboard as I possibly could before putting it in the case, because it's just a bit more fiddly when you've actually got it in the case. So that's what I've decided to do. Because I am on carpet, I've got to be quite careful with the static that I build up, because that can damage the components. So I have got my power supply unit here, which I'm going to plug in and then switch it off to 0, so it grounds but it's not on. And by grounding I mean it dissipates the static charge that I'm building up by walking around on the carpet. A lot of people buy like a mat that's like an anti-static surface, but you can also use your motherboard box for that instead. So I'm going to be doing that today because I have not got any fancy anti-static bracelets or mats. Anyway, in the instruction manual, I think it's on page 48. Actually, yes, Chris, thank you. Chris on Instagram helped me with this because he pointed out that I could actually do it without putting an old CPU in, because I actually asked AMD to send me out like a temporary 3000 series chip just so I could update my motherboard. However, hopefully this might negate that step. I'm kind of scared to touch it. I'm like, it's metal and it's got electricity running through it. This is a bad idea. Okay, so I'm going to go grab my motherboard. As I say, it's the B550M motor. It is a macro ATX board. I never know how to... I know you're just not supposed to touch like on top of it, but I never know how to take it out the bag. Okay, so I need to plug this into the PSU to power it up, and then this is gonna go in to one of the USB slots. Right, okay, yes, I see the flash bias USB slot and I see the button. This is good news. So we must have got the right pins in from the PSU to the motherboard. I've got the USB drive in, it's flashing, seems to be working. I think we're flashing it successfully. Fingers crossed, even though I'm using an SD card. Okay, now that it's stopped flashing, I think we've flashed it successfully. The light is still on. I'm going to take the drive out and move on to the CPU installation. So now that the BIOS on the motherboard is updated, we can move into some installation of components on the motherboard. So to start off with, I'm going to install the CPU. And yes, I have changed clothes. It got really cold and it took longer than I thought, so I wanted to be comfortable. It's going to be a long day. Okay, so I'm now going to re-unpack because I previously sort of unboxed on stream. But it doesn't want to open. So there's also an air cooler here that comes with a CPU, which is pretty cool. And here we go. So here's the processor. I'm supposed to be looking for an arrow, which I can see on the corner, that's supposed to align with an arrow on the motherboard. I might have to look at the instruction booklet, but there's no shame in that. Like, look how cute this instruction booklet is. Because their logo is a dragon. I think it's really cute. Okay, so we have the 5600X out and I can see where the arrow is. It correlates with sort of a blob on the corner of the slot, but you're going to have to come a bit closer to see. So come over here. There's a tiny little arrow just here. And that correlates with this sort of blob at the corner, so that has to fit that way. So if we move this up, oh, okay, I'm quite scared now. And it should just drop in. Okay, I think that's it. We've definitely got it nice and snug. And then lock it. Oh, this feels so wrong, but it's fine. It's okay. Right. That's it. CPU installed. There is the 5600X in there. So next we are going to be moving on to the RAM. As I say, it's a kit of 4 times 8 gigabytes. So here are the 4 RAM slots. The idea is if you had 2, you would be doing it in this slot and this slot away from the CPU, and these are like sort of like paired channels. But because we have 4, it doesn't actually matter which order we put them in because they're all the same. So we just need to make sure the little, so you can see that's the wrong way around because there's a little sort of channel that breaks up the chip. So we need to turn that around. Oh, it feels like I shouldn't be pressing this hard. Okay, we should have been pressing that hard. I love the look of the HyperXPredator RAM. There's a signature aluminium heat spreader with the HyperX logo, which brings a great contrast to the top RGB light panel, which is almost like frosted glass. So now we're all kitted out with the RAM. Now I'm going to move on to the M.2 slot. Okay, so this is something I'm really glad I just watched a video for, because this is another M.2 slot, but this is a heatsink. So you take this off, put the SSD in, and then put it back on. In this M.2 slot, I will be inserting one of Kingston Technology's NVMe SSDs, which utilises the PCI Express lanes on the motherboard. So here's the 500GB KC2500 from Kingston. So it should be like a little springboard. Okay, like that. So we're peeling this off so it has good contact. Do need to be gentle though. Okay, I think that's it. I'm screwing this back in. There's our first M.2 slot. I feel like we've done pretty well so far. So, gotta have a snack break. Next up is the CPU cooler. This is an AIO from CoolerMaster called the ML240 Mirror Edition. And it's called the mirror because it's like an infinite mirror when it's turned on. It looks pretty cool. So what we're going to do is start by putting the brackets on and screwing those in. This is the radiator, and this is where the water, the hot and cold water, will be coming back and forward from the CPU, which will be attached sort of here. We need to put brackets on the sides. At this point my camera cut out unfortunately, so I don't have any footage of me putting on the brackets. However, I'll link down below the tutorial I used. Here's me putting on the fans onto the radiator of the CoolerMaster Master Liquid ML240 mirror. I haven't got a cameraman, so I'm kind of stuck for angles here, but I'm going to take the top and side panel off. The Lian Li 11 Dynamic. Should be reasonably easy apparently. We will see. So there's 2 screws on the back of here, and they don't come out completely so you don't lose them, but then this top panel just slides off. So we can take that off. And this one should come off too. Now we're getting there. Starting to look like there's light at the end of the tunnel. I am enjoying it though. It's just a lot. Back panel. It literally just says go up. I just don't want it to go flying. Why is it so much? Am I done? It just says up. Oh, I'm a weakling. I'm a weakling. What's stopping it? I've just realised what's stopping it. I did it. Now I have to change where the standoffs are on the case so they line up with the holes on the B550M motor, as it is a micro ATX motherboard. By lining up the I/O shield with the case, I've now established where the standoffs need to go for this motherboard, so I'm screwing them in now. Now it's time to use those standoffs to secure the motherboard to the case with screws. The motherboard is now secured to the case. Next, I'm going to take out these PSU cables and swap them out with the much better looking Reaper cables. This clips onto here, like that. And this comes on here. Right around yet. Press quite hard. Okay, that's clicked. Big shout out to ReaperCable for sending this over. I do like the white and carbon, looks really cool. Okay, that's clicked in place. That looks far better. Next, I wanted to mount the CoolerMaster Master Liquid ML240 mirror CPU cooler onto the top of my case. So we already prepared half of it earlier by putting the fans on. Now it's just time for the radiator to line up with the brackets along the top and then to screw in place. Okay, so now got the PSU extension sorted from ReaperCable. We've got the radiator mounted. Now onto thermal paste for the CPU. So we only need a tiny bit of thermal paste right in the centre. For this CPU cooler there is a universal mount, however with mine obviously I've went with AMD, so this is an AMD way of mounting. There's two little clips underneath the brackets that you kind of hook underneath the board and then screw in place. And the last thing I decided to do today was mount the GPU, which is the MSI 2060 Super Gaming X. This is where I decided to get some well-earned rest after a whole day of filming and building. So I decided to cozy up for the night and play some more of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I really hope you all enjoyed my build video so far, and part 2, including a reveal, will be up in the next few days, so make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss this. I saw something happen.